What's up guys, Jay here, back with another video, and a lot of you guys are in the market for a good phone that does everything good but won't break the bank, so look no further than the 2014 Moto G. The Moto G 2nd Gen was announced September of 2014, and this 5-inch phone encompasses a 720 by 1280p IPS display. You can get it in all white or in all black, with customizable backplates. But what makes this phone the best budget phone out right now is how Motorola managed to pair mid-range hardware with top-of-the-line software and wrap that all up in a nice $180 package. This phone is so easy to recommend to anyone who's just looking for a phone that works fine and isn't too hooked up on specs. It's elegantly crafted in Motorola's design philosophy with a dimple on the back that just so conveniently happens to be exactly where my finger lands on when I'm holding it. The phone also feels very ergonomic with a slight curve that contours to the hand. Although it's made of plastic, it has enough weight to it so that it doesn't feel cheap or finicky. Before I get started with the review, I want to talk about the few cons of the phone first. Starting off with this one that's only specific to the white model is that it gets dirty super quick. If you're the type with sweaty palms, I strongly recommend getting this in the black version because too much time I find myself having to wipe the phone or wash my hands before I take it out of my pocket. But if you must have a white phone, it's all good because of all the different backplate options that Motorola has, and as if that isn't enough for you, you can always check out dbrand and add your own skin to make it less slippery and dirty at the same time. That's the only con I've found with this phone that can so easily be fixed because everything else about this phone I was already kinda expecting. So let's go. When I say low budget phone, that's often associated with a negative connotation or everyone assume that it's going to be a brick. But the Moto G 2nd Gen runs nearly a stock version of Android and updated to Lollipop straight out the box. I know 1GB of RAM doesn't sound like much, but this phone still flies through everyday tasks with no hiccups even for a power user. I've tried everything that I can to get this phone to stutter, and it still keeps pushing through that because Lollipop was designed with low-end hardware in mind. Battery life on the device isn't great nor is it unbearable. It's okay. It's only a 2070 mAh battery that's non-removable. A typical day for me goes from 6 AM to around 1 AM. I can go a whole day with light use before I have to pull out the charger, but then again, I'm not a power user anyway. My day just consists of about 5 hours of music, sending a few messages, reading a few emails, and taking a bit notes. I don't really play games, watch movies, or do any heavy internet usage on my phone. But for what I do, battery life is phenomenal and couldn't ask for more out of this device. Camera quality is one of the low points of this phone. It's an 8-megapixel shooter with no image stabilization or 4K recording. Matter of fact, it only supports 720p format. Autofocusing isn't good, neither is it intuitive. But when you do get it to work, it still takes subpar photos. So low light is out of the question. In other words, this phone is not a phone for a picture lover or a selfie enthusiast. But that's still not a deal breaker though, because if you compare the Moto G 8-megapixel camera to the Nexus 6 13-megapixel shooter, you see that you actually get what you pay for, and for $180, that's a hell of a deal. With this phone, you're promised to get updates as soon as they come out from Google, and that acts sort of like an incentive to keep the phone way past its life cycle, because it's always going to be the first to run the latest version of Android, like the Nexus. The Moto G does a lot of things great, like the front-facing speakers that should be standard now. Only when you start consuming media on your phone with speakers facing right at you, you realize how much you've been missing and can't go back. Call quality is clear and audio doesn't sound muffled and you don't get that noise in the background. With 2 stereo speakers, it's literally music to your ears. They may not be boom sound, but they do get exceptionally loud.
When I pull up on a nigga, tell that nigga bad back. I'm too good with these words, watch a nigga backtrack. If I die, all I know is I'm a motherfucker.
When you see phones at this price point, you often think there's some major sacrifices or you're going to be getting subpar service. But Motorola was able to give us a great budget phone by just cutting out features that we don't need. For instance, take the 2014 Moto X, remove the customizable options, take away half the megapixels so there's no 4K recording, remove all the Moto shortcuts and gestures like Moto Action and Moto Assist, lower the screen resolution and battery size, and then subtract $320 from its price point, and you get the 2014 Moto G. Still a great performing phone that's going to get you throughout the day, but it's only when you realize that you can't wave your hand across the phone to wake it, or shake it to get into the camera, or none of the Moto actions work, and when you say, "Okay Google," it doesn't respond, is when you realize how convenient that those features can be and start to contemplate whether the extra $300 would have been worth it or not. So who buys this phone? Well, Motorola's core demographics are people who doesn't get into the spec wars, who's looking for an all-round performer that's not costly and still gets the first-class experience on the phone. And my personal advice to you guys, if you are in the market for a smartphone right now, you shouldn't be getting a high-end 2014 phone anyway, because the way mobile tech industry works is in cycles. And we're now coming towards the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. So if you want a phone, I strongly recommend waiting on seeing what phone comes out in the next 2 months. But if you must have a phone right now, in the meantime, the Moto G 2nd Gen is your best option. So many phones were announced at MWC, and that's not even all of them. So what better way to stay connected and up to date with everything happening in tech than subscribing to my channel? All you gotta do is click that red button and it would notify you every time something awesome happens. Anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, and as always, tech is life.